At this time, she's not here today, but many of you do not know that Dr. Mary Benjamin retired at the end of April. And so she is currently in a retirement state now. She is on vacation, and so she is not here today. However, we do have someone to accept this presentation from Representative Flowers on her behalf.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. All right. So I have to start out by first saying that I was shocked with the news that Dr. Benjamin had retired, and actually I had been here for another conference probably about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, and I had no idea because she was still working. And when I did find out, I believe Dr. Johnson told me that she had retired, and I was disappointed to hear that. I was surprised. I can't imagine her not working and not being here in her heels and her black and gold, running something and advocating for the university and advocating for students. So it was certainly my pleasure to do this. I hate that she won't be here, and maybe the next time we're on campus we can do this again. So I'd like to read to you what it says, and certainly be happy to present it to whoever her representative is here to accept it on her behalf today. And it's a citation from the House of Representatives presented to Dr. Mary Benjamin. It says, whereas Dr. Mary Benjamin, who has served as Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, UAPB, from 1992, up to 2013, now retires from the position of Vice Chancellor for Research, Innovation, and Economic Development at UAPB, and whereas Dr. Benjamin received her Bachelor of Science degree from Tuskegee Institute, her Master of Arts in Sociology from Atlanta University, and PhD in Sociology from Mississippi State University, and whereas Dr. Benjamin has dedicated her professional career to the education of people of all ages and walks of life, touching countless lives and helping her community along the way. And whereas Dr. Benjamin is a member of Alpha Kappa Mu Honor Society and has been recognized for her talent and achievements by the Pine Bluff Chamber of Business and Professional Women for outstanding services in education, the Arkansas Senate for creativity in developing programs and degrees for UAPB, the Arkansas House of Representatives for founding the annual Conference on Education Access, that's what I was here for a few weeks ago, and by Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated as the recipient of the Extraordinary Service in Education Award, and whereas, along with her distinguished career and indelible impact on education, Dr. Benjamin is the proud member of 3 children and grandmother of 2, and whereas the House of Representatives of the 91st General Assembly of the State of Arkansas takes great pride in recognizing Dr. Mary E. Benjamin on the occasion of her retirement and wishes her well. Now therefore, pursuant to the motion of Representative Vivian Flowers and Representatives Vivian Flowers and Ken Ferguson, the Arkansas House of Representatives directs that this citation be presented on this 18th day of May, 2017. It was a feat to try and summarize an example of all of her many accomplishments, honors, and awards on a paper of this size. So I didn't begin to outline her accomplishments and her efforts that have benefited this university and Pine Bluff and students, including this building. So with that, I thank you for your attention and thank you for accepting this on her behalf. Katherine for
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It is a pleasure and with great gratitude that I stand here this early afternoon, and I want to thank Dr. Lawtree, I still want to call her that old name, for allowing us this opportunity on this wonderful conference. And when I approached her about an idea that I had, she was very gracious and said, yes, we can share our time at the conference over lunch for you to make a special presentation to a very deserving group of people. Back in early winter, January, here were a person who was installed as a new council member for the Pine Bluff City Council. And we started talking, we had been talking after he was elected in November, and we really started having strong discussions back in January. And it was surrounding how we could strengthen the smoke-free workplace law in the city of Pine Bluff. We know some years ago, Pine Bluff, following on the heels of Fayetteville, passed a smoke-free ordinance, making their workplaces smoke-free. But since we have lived some of that time and new products came on the market, especially vaping products, we knew and we know and we are working with many cities to make their ordinance, their policies, their rules and regulations a little bit more comprehensive by including electronic smoking devices, electronic nicotine delivery system, whatever the terminology is. We wanted to include that in the existing ordinances that are in Arkansas. So we thought, you know what, Pine Bluff, we had Councilman member Lockett. We thought, a low-hanging fruit, because he has a background in tobacco prevention and control. And we know his passion for helping and protecting people. So we entered into a dialogue about, what do you think about approaching this for the city of Pine Bluff? Councilman Lockett readily said, yes, let's discuss that, let's make a move on that, and so we did. And I want you to know, as of February, we had a little learning session with the Public Health Committee. Fast forward, that committee recommended, yes, we need to move forward with a 100% vote of all committee members recommending that we are going to recommend to the entire city council that the council adopt the addition of electronic smoking devices into the existing ordinance, whereby making it comprehensive. We said, okay, we're going to do that. They did it over 3 readings. The first reading, it went fine. The second reading went fine. And the night of the 3rd reading, I got an email from Bruce to say, hey, it's a done deal in the city of Pine Bluff. And the mayor was very proud to share with you that Pine Bluff, yet again, is showing the state of Arkansas the way to go. It is by far a cutting-edge city, doing great things, and we wanted to take the opportunity today in the presence of all of you to share and let Pine Bluff know that we are so very proud of them and the courage that they took stepping forward to make Pine Bluff a comprehensive city. So we can tell A&R, we may not have a state, but we do have a city. Doing that, following on the heel of Fairfield Bay, so we now have 2 comprehensive cities. So the award that we're presenting today says Leadership Award. They're leading the way. It's presented to Mayor Shirley Washington and the Pine Bluff City Council in recognition of your dedication to strong public health laws and tobacco-free workplaces and public places, presented May 18, 2017. And I understand that we have a representative from the mayor's office, and I'm going to ask that person to come up to accept this award.
It is an honor and a privilege to stand here before you on behalf of Mayor Shirley Washington and the City Council. Mayor Washington couldn't be here. She was at a conference that was in Tiller, Arkansas, but she wanted me to come here to let you know that we are truly advocates of you all. We want our city to be smoke-free. We want to do everything that we can to promote healthy living within the city of Pine Bluff. And we're just challenging each and every last one of you here today to pick up the mantle and follow suit. Thank you.
We also have some of the city council members who made that courageous vote present, and I'm going to ask them to stand, and we do have something to present to them as well. We have a plaque that would more than likely be kept in the mayor's office, but we want something for you to keep in your own little private office. So today we are honoring, presenting this certificate of appreciation to the Honorable Steve Mays, Representative, oh, that may be fraudulent, huh? Councilman Mays.
Associate, thank you all. Matter of fact, good evening for the ones I didn't get to speak to, the ones that I know personally. Alderman Lockett, we're in the 4th Ward together. We work very well together. He led the way, and I felt that I knew what he was doing, and I didn't have any problem supporting it, and I'm glad he did it. Congratulations, Ms. Dunn. Congratulations to you as well, and everybody here. This is the 4th Ward you're in, UAPB area. Enjoy yourselves.
Council person we're going to recognize, of course, is the Honorable Bruce Lockett.
Thank you. Oh, I'd like to thank Ms. Argo's staff and Mrs. Donald here for this award. I'll be speaking a little bit later, so I'd just like to say thanks now.
Certificate of appreciation goes to the Honorable Glenn Brown Jr.
Thank you so much.
Any other council members from Pine Bluff in the room before we move on to the next presentation, and then we can move on to lunch? If not, we do have certificates for the other members who were not able to be with us, and we're going to ensure that they get them. So that's that. Now we're going to make a quick transition because our second award goes to a person that is very important to the work that we do here at the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, the Minority Initiative Subrecipient Grant Office. You heard Representative Flowers talk about the retirement of Dr. Mary Benjamin, and I'm going to miss her. I'm going to miss the knowledge and the expertise that she brings to the table, the institutional knowledge and history about the programs. And I recognize when you lose one, we must build up and grow one because we forever need resources and we need people who are supporting us. So we know on this particular campus, we have a relatively new chancellor. And we want the chancellor to be a huge supporter. Perhaps he cannot fill Dr. Benjamin's shoes, but he has shoes of his own. And I bet he can just walk very nicely in them. So what we're wanting to do, our intent is to let them know that he's a very good partner. We depend on him and we appreciate him and his efforts. So today I stand before you with an award to the chancellor at this university, and it's on behalf of all of funded grantees for fiscal year 2016-2017. So if you are in the room, do you mind standing? Those who are funded by Ms. Argo for fiscal year, the current year, if you are here, do you mind standing? And if you're too tired, I understand, but if you don't mind, this award is given on your behalf, extended to the chancellor. It reads, expressions of gratitude extended to Dr. Lawrence B. Alexander, Chancellor, University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, for your leadership, passion, and dedication to eliminating eliminating tobacco use in communities of color and other disparate communities served by the Minority Initiative Recipient Grant Office grantees. With your support, Arkansas is sure to become a healthier state whereby workers and the general public are free from exposure to secondhand smoke where they live, work, learn, worship, and play. With sincere appreciation, the Minority Initiative Recipient Grant Office grantees for fiscal year 2016-17 presented this 18th day of May in the year of our Lord 2017 and is signed by Katherine, Executive Director for the Coalition for Tobacco-Free Arkansas. At this time, I understand Ms. Monique is representing the Office of the Chancellor, and we would love to present this award to her on behalf. Unfortunately, due to a schedule conflict, Dr. Alexander cannot be here this afternoon. Therefore, it gives me great pleasure to accept this award on his behalf. Thank you all so much.
So I hear lots of chatter, so I know that things are going well out there with you. I see some golden baked chicken that's on my plate that I have not eaten, so I am motivated to make sure that we sail through this smoothly, expeditiously, so I can have a day with my piece of chicken on my plate. But in the meantime, we have a little business to do. As you can see from your program booklet, we have panel discussion entitled The Importance of Policy at Every Level. I am going to take a little bit of discretion to also do a ... and add a couple of things to say to that title, and how do we use policy to advance our goals and objectives. And we're going to approach the panel discussion from that arena. Helping us to have this discussion today, we have three knowledgeable individuals with us. The first panelist closest to me, to my immediate right, is Representative Vivian Flowers. Representative Vivian Flowers was sworn into the 90th Arkansas General Assembly as state representative for District 17 in 2015. Now in her second term, she serves on the House Revenue and Tax and Housing and Aging, Children and Youth, Military and Legislative Affairs Committees, as well as the Legislative Joint Auditing Committee. Flowers is in the, excuse me, I'm reading, but I am not reading. I need glasses to help.
And I need them back.
Oh, let there be light. Flowers is the 2017-18 chair of the Arkansas Legislative Caucus and continues to serve in national leadership posts with the National Black Caucus of State Legislators and Women in Legislative Leadership. Flowers, a fifth-generation Arkansan and a proud Pine Bluff native, currently resides in the historic downtown district of Pine Bluff. She is a member of the Pine Bluff branch of the NAACP and an active member of St. John AME Church. Our second panelist, seated in the middle of two beautiful women, we have Councilman Bruce Lockett. Bruce Lockett is a Pine Bluff native. Lockett is known for his community involvement and advocacy work. He was elected to the Pine Bluff City Council in November 2016, representing District Ward 4. He chairs an Economic Community Development Committee, in addition to serving on the Public Health and Welfare Committee and the Public Works Committee. Lockett served on the Jefferson County Court from 2014 through 2016. Since 2009, Mr. Lockett has been board president of the Family Community Development Corporation. And I will add, he is married to his lovely wife, Sonia. The third panelist we have today, and we're so grateful to have her, is Ms. Tracey Ann Nelson. Tracey is in her second year serving as the Executive Director of the Arkansas Education Committee, AEA. In her role as Executive Director, she leads the operation of the largest educational association in the state of Arkansas. Before joining AEA, she was Director of Government Relations Research Coalition, Director of Government Relations Research Coalition, Communications for the Georgia Association of Educators, a statewide organization where she managed policy initiative, legislative funding, and external relations for the organization and its stakeholders. I want you to join me in welcoming the three panelists we have with us today. To help us get the conversation started, I am going to pose an open-ended question, and I will ask all of the panelists to use it as they form their opening remarks. And the question, or combined questions, statement happens to be, first of all, what and how do you define policy? How does a policy differ from a rule, or is there any difference? And the third part of this very long question is, how have you used policy in your area of work to advance your work goals and objectives? At this time, I'm going to turn it over.
Oh, can you repeat that?
The last part?
How do you define policy?
Okay. How do you define policy? The second part of that question is, comma, how does a policy differ from a simple rule, or is there any difference at all? Comma, how have you utilized policy in your area of work to advance your goals and your objectives?
Do you want me to start? Representative? Oh, yes, go ahead.
Oh, we will start with Tracey. Thank you.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I don't think I'm Can you hear me?
I think you have to do it
No.
from the back, from the bottom.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm sorry, right here.
Yeah. Maestro. Thank you. Jill? Yes, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate the invitation. I don't get to travel around Arkansas enough, so this is a really good opportunity for me. The last time I was in Pine Bluff was for an economic development discussion at Simmons Bank. So, and it's going to be tomorrow again about the Delta discussion, so it's been good to come back, so I appreciate the invitation. So the first question is, how do you define policy, and what is policy versus rule? So I'll start with the second part, which is rule versus policy. Rules are the interpretation of policy. It's how policy is enforced. It is how a department or an entity decides to enforce what the legislators have defined as a policy. So for example, and I'll speak about education, even though I have experience in other things, when our legislators pass new laws, regarding public education or education in general, those laws go to the Department of Education to be defined in rules and how they are then implemented. So that's the difference. The policy is the legislation, the rule is the interpretation of the legislation. Okay. What I think a lot of people disassociate from policy is money. Without money, policy is just talking, just a discussion. It's just somewhat, I'll use this term, emotional investment or emotional blackmail, whichever side you're on in terms of that policy. So without funding, whenever the legislators gather in Little Rock, it is about money. It is about your state budget and how those dollars are designated. And so if you would like to see your tax dollars designated within the vision that you have to be engaged with your legislators. Can't assume that they're just gonna go and do what's right, because what's right to you is different from what's right to others. And as we can see, when you look at the pie, the funding mechanism, and how it's utilized, it may not meet what you consider the interests of you, your family, your community, and therefore you have to advocate, agitate, educate, engage, and coalesce. How have I used policy to advance the work that I do? My work has been really focused for the last maybe 20 years around public education. And there is a trend, some will say disturbing, some will say not, to use public education funding, which ends up being a significant portion of the state budget, 48% in Arkansas, to reconstitute how we define education and how we use those monies. So my work is involved in helping legislators understand the impact of their decisions, how to come up with good decisions for students. K through 12 is my, core area, and the impact it has on the learning of every student in Arkansas, which is equal to 755,000 students that are in our K through 12 system. So I use policy to advocate on behalf of students and educators and to help legislators comprehend their impact and the funding mechanism that schools need to be great in Arkansas. I hope that answered the question.
Okay. All right, first I'd like to thank you, Ms. Argo's staff, for inviting me to be part of this panel. And I'd like to thank you all for having the patience to sit and listen to me. I'm kind of short. My definition of policy is pretty much a statement of action that impacts a group, that has a desired outcome. That if one says we're dealing with health policy, then usually a hospital or a state will make a policy that has a desired outcome that would save lives or make something more efficient. Unlike a rule might be something that may impact a classroom, may impact a smaller group of people, but not be an official statement of action. And many times rules may have desired outcomes, but they're a little less than impacted. I use policy as a councilman on the Pine Bluff City Council to try to curb some of the maybe disadvantaged or some of the disadvantageous things that may be happening within our city. So policy has to have some outcome. Why do you pass this particular policy? Mm-hmm. And that's what we want to do. I tell people, smoking policies are designed to make people healthier by trying to curb their inclination to smoke in certain areas. And our desired outcome is to make it where you can't smoke anywhere, so you'll see the necessity to stop smoking. And that I think that's the thing that sometimes we don't understand, that the policy, when I talk to lawmakers many times, they say, well, how are we going to enforce this? And I said, well, enforcement really isn't what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a social norm that sends a message to people that smoking is not socially accepted in certain areas. In cars with young people, in nursing homes, in parks where there may be families. And so I often tell folks, don't worry about the enforcement piece, because most people are law-abiding people, that you don't need to have the police standing in the park to make sure that you're not smoking in the park. If you see a big sign that says no smoking, then most people that smoke have said, I'm going to find another area to smoke. And that's one of the things, I guess, when you're trying to get policies, whether they be residential or whether they be in parks, try to communicate to people that your smoking policy is more of a mechanism of education than it is one of penalizing people. You know, and people will try to get the picture that if you're educating people that smoking is not healthy, by saying that we can't smoke in this particular residential area or park, then they begin to get the message. And what I tell people, the message doesn't come overnight. Most policies, they don't have the impact the first day that they are enacted, but it takes some time to get them to get the desired outcome.
I tend to look at policy, I guess, in terms of definition from a really, really broad sense. A policy is sort of, I look at it as an official, sort of packaged, defined parameter around an issue. And you say that broadly because we use the word to sort of distinguish between governmental levels. We say local policy, right? County policy, state policy, federal policy. Between public and private sector. You might have a corporate policy. You might have organizational policies of a nonprofit. So, but we know what it means. We know it's sort of the rules or the laws or the whatever. It's something that's sort of codified, even if people who disagree about the role of a judge and say a judge should just be implementing the law. The judge, Supreme Court justices shouldn't be making law, shouldn't be policy making on the bench, right? And so to me, a policy encompasses all these terms when we say a rule, rules and regs, agency policy, right? Encompass rules and regs. When they refer to us, sometimes they refer to legislators or city councilmen as policymakers, right? So that policy is that thing that you point to that says something, that says what something is supposed to be, that guides whatever, the law or something like that. I mean, it's official. So that said, and I think that answers the question about policy versus rule. I think a rule is a policy, depending on where it sits, who it guides. And policies can have teeth or not. Policies can be policy issues, right? So it's not really an effective policy yet. It can be proposals. It can be policy research, so it's not a thing yet. And so we talked about the long process. And then sometimes it seems like things happen really quickly, like we've seen the water issues in Flint. It seemed like all of a sudden, kids were sick and everybody was responding, but really citizens were trying to draw attention to brown water and their kids getting sick for like a year and a half before anybody did anything about it. And then the right media outlet reported on it in the right way, then all of a sudden there was urgency, right? Then people were questioned and folks were getting arrested and all that stuff. So, there can be a long sort of wait and a long policy process, or there can be a reactionary policy. For me, I tend to look at policy and policy making as one of the tools, one of my roles or one of the jobs that come along with the position that I'm in and the position that I've been elected to. Because you have policy making, which could be operating from behind the scenes to drive what an agency rule or reg looks like. Doesn't have anything to do with the legislative process. Or I worked behind the scenes on legislation that I actually worked on for a year, helped draft the parameters of it. Somebody else's name was on front, somebody else presented it in committee, because I knew if I did it, it wouldn't get passed. You know, so if you want something done, you've got to decide, if you want the policy in place, how do you best get it there? Sometimes it does cost a lot of money. We know that there are a lot of corporations and organizations that decide they want to see something happening. And so let's look at what we saw play out in Florida with Trayvon Martin. Before Trayvon Martin was murdered, whoever heard of Stand Your Ground laws? But those laws, over a period of years, had been proposed, shared at conferences with state legislators all over the country, who then took them back to their states as model legislation and got them passed before Trayvon Martin was ever murdered. And then we looked up and it was already the law. It was already policy, right? And so now the policy making focus for something like that, for someone like me, would be, how do we reverse that? Or in Arkansas, how do we prevent that from ever becoming policy in Arkansas, right? There are policies that we're looking at when I go to conferences right now about how we take preventive measures to make sure that those kinds of things don't happen again in Pine Bluff or in the state of Arkansas. May never happen, may have to happen on a city level. And I know that we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's super important, because at the end of the day, once you get something in the form of a policy, whether it's at work, whoever thought that there would be actual trainings and consultants and policies in just about every organization or company, and certainly in state law, as it relates to sexual harassment, right? That used to be just the way things are. If somebody kept bugging you to go out on a date, or put their hands on you, or wouldn't let you break up and you work together, you just had to deal with it. Now you can sue, get somebody fired. You know, if you're bothered in the slightest, you know, so things change. And it changes when policies are actually put in place and implemented. So they're very, very important.
Our next question I am going to pose directly to Representative Flowers, but the other two panelists, feel free to chime in. You spoke a little bit about public-private policy in your opening statement. And most of the people in this room work in some proximity of tobacco control. And I want to know from you, what advice would you offer tobacco prevention advocates as it pertains to advancing their cause through policy, both public-private or voluntary legislative ones? Sometimes we know we're working private. So what advice could you give us today?
I think the thing that I regularly advise any advocate, whether you're elected or not, is follow the money. If you see who is supporting, sponsoring, contributing to whom, who makes money where and what states, you know, if you look at tobacco companies and look at where the sales are, so let's look at the laws that were passed subsequent to the attorneys general, which included our attorney general, Winston Bryant at the time, winning the lawsuit, and we knew that we were going to get the state a windfall of money. So there were policies that had to be put in place to determine where that money would go. Would we pay attention to our general fund? Would we put it in areas to address health? And so there were a lot of advocates out there saying we need to do it one way or the other. And, we can even go back to the lawsuit. It was based upon, you see commercials about it today, tobacco companies who had internal documents that targeted minority populations and advertised in a way to basically get kids hooked on tobacco at a young age to solidify a pool of customers that would be customers for a lifetime. And it was that enabled Arkansas and other states to be some of those states to get the dollars that we got and that we're able to spend on health initiatives today. So follow the money is what I would say.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
As a tobacco prevention advocate, I would say create or define your coalition. You can't do it alone. Partner with other organizations and entities that share your interest in health and in the environment. The most successful sort of public space policy and legislation comes from many people moving in the same direction on an issue. So you can't do it alone. Find your partners and build a coalition around it. And as I said, and as the representative has confirmed, follow the money. I don't know if everybody's aware, but in the special session that was called, the Arkansas Tobacco Settlement Fund that has been in place for a while, which is $102.8 million, the trust fund, with $30 million of interest that the legislature can use to fund health initiatives. There was some discussion during the special session to redirect sometimes those funds.
There wasn't discussion, it was the law passed to move that money into reserves for the state under the auspices of changing our credit rating. Right on the heels of us being $70 million in arrears, but after 2 sessions of providing tax cuts, $100 million of the $150 million going to the highest earners in the state, which really amounted to not much. People saving anywhere from $15 to $500, but now we have no general improvement dollars as legislators to support local nonprofits. So it's a matter of priorities. Again, follow the money.
So, let me just reinterpret what she just said. Essentially, tobacco settlement resources that sit in a fund has been redirected to be used in a different way other than how it was defined.
By the people who voted for that.
Which are your representatives and our elected officials. And we have not commented on that. Maybe I just have.
Well, and it's,
but I'm just pointing it out. We have to pay attention to the resources that we send to Little Rock and how they are utilized and how they are legislated by our legislature.
Yeah, I just want to get on another subject because I'm here to tell you that big money, you're going to have a hard time fighting. So what I encourage you all to do is to make policy in places where you control. Your churches, your sororities, your schools, your cities. I tell people I can't do anything in Washington. I can do little in Little Rock, but I can do a whole bunch in Pine Bluff. Because in Pine Bluff, I know the landscape and I know the numerical composition of the council, and the chances of me getting something done is about 99.9% greater than Pine Bluff. So what I encourage you to do is to look at low-hanging fruit in places where you know people that can enact these policies, because what you're doing with tobacco policy is creating a social norm, whether it's a state policy, a city policy, a church policy, a school policy. So don't get hung up in those fights you can't win. We can get 1,000 people to go to the State House and run around there saying that we want tobacco money reallocated. We may have some way of influencing that, but most people have no idea on 90%, and that's another thing you gotta understand, that regardless of what political arena you're in, most politicians don't get many calls. So if you're in a city of maybe 500 people, they don't get many calls. Here in Pine Bluff, I'm in a city of 49,000 people. I've gotten on one ordinance I sponsored maybe 3-4 calls. But what I'm saying, that's a lot, but what I'm telling you is that in the areas that you're in, keep in contact with your policymakers, but more importantly, look at those environments that you have great influence with and try to pass policies in those environments where you know you have a greater chance of winning.
If I could just, go piggyback, because this is an area where it represents, Councilman Lockett and I talk and debate and work together on things, and he has sent me information that was super helpful in helping us get the Delta Rhythm and Bayous legislation passed. However, sometimes when he says stuff like, you gotta pick, what you said, don't get hung up in things you can't win. So yes, you do want to prioritize your time, your resources, and your attention, especially as elected officials. The people, I say anything is possible. I know anything is possible. And while, as one person or as a small group, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, and politics is local for sure, even on the federal level, politics drives policy. And who y'all vote for and what you scream about and what you say makes a difference. And money drives politics, but votes determine who the policymakers are. And the minute, and just like Councilman Lockett said, we don't get many calls, we don't get many people showing up to the committee meetings, but boy, when you get about 4 people who do, and they all say they want to speak, and they want to speak against something when someone showed up and thought that they were going to come in and it was going to be a short meeting, but 4 people come with stuff to hand out, and they start talking about how their baby's sick, or how they lost their job, guarantee you, it changes the game.
That's right.
It changes the game, because when we see 4 people coming, we know 4,000 out there are thinking like them, because this is big enough for 4 people to take off work or to leave their house and come do something that is intimidating to most. So I'm telling you that come 2018 in May and November, come 2020 in May and November, you have the power. You have the power. And there is nothing that is too big, too wide, too hard, too tall that you can't say. Look at those people on TV, worried about whether or not their kids and their families don't have health care. I watched last week a congressman stand up and try to blow a bunch of smoke to people and wouldn't answer questions directly. Somebody walked up on him and put his hands on his chest and put some money in his pocket. Angry. Now, y'all probably can get away with that. But it happened, and what I'm saying is you better believe that the people in that town, that room full of people, represent some folks that are gonna make sure that that dude who came in there lying to them will be unelected.
Okay, thank you. We've heard several of you mention the importance of policy work leading to social norm change. And we need to change social norms around certain issues. Can you give me an example, Councilman Lockett, where we've had a policy implemented, either private or public, and following the subsequent
norm change around it. Can you think of anything that would be a good example to share?
I think pretty much all the policies that we've implemented related to smoking, we're in about a 20-year fight that, I don't know how old Miss Argo is, but I do know since the inception of Miss Argo, the social acceptance of smoking has declined here in my environment, that people just don't put out cigarettes as often, as frequently, as nonchalantly as they did, 20 years ago. I just, me and Ms. Katherine worked on electronic cigarette ordinance here in Pine Bluff. And I can't take a lot of credit for it because there's so much groundwork that has been done in Pine Bluff. When I was just a youngster, Naomi Somerville was running commercials on public TV in Pine Bluff about smoking, and that was 20 years ago. And she really had a fight. She got 50 young people organized. They called council people, packed the city council chambers. But fast forward to today, I put forth the ordinance that got unanimous support, and not one person spoke against it. But that wasn't me. Dr. Johnson is the founding director of Ms. Argo. He fought to get Ms. Argo funded in the legislature. We got Ms. Argo that's headquartered in Pine Bluff. And we in Pine Bluff have a anti-smoking tradition that does not transcend other places. So I'm just saying that norm in Pine Bluff is just an example that here in Pine Bluff, smoking is not as socially acceptable now as it was 20 years ago. There is a decline, and the work that you do, it is impactful. Don't think that you are not making a difference in the lives of the people in your community by being anti-smoking advocates. You are making a difference. Every time you talk to a person, you are educating that person about the dangers of smoking. So that's just an example how we're using policy, but the outcome is a social norm change. And I can see it in my community that I grew up in, that people don't smoke as much and they don't smoke as casually. It was a time where folks would pull out a cigarette, they didn't care whether the smoke bothered you or not. But that's not the case now. People ask permission, can I smoke?
I've seen it change in my lifetime too. Both my parents used to smoke, and I remember distinctly my mother taking us to school every morning. I used to sit behind her. I grew up in Jamaica, so we didn't have school buses. And she used to put the car in reverse, begin to reverse, flick her cigarette, and it would go right into my eye. And I just developed such a hate for cigarettes as a child from that experience on a daily basis. But my parents stopped smoking probably by the time I was 15. They both decided to stop smoking. And to see them do that, and then in my own, experience, that change in a social norm is impactful, and I hope that other people have had that experience to watch that transition in their own life. But in Arkansas, we still have, 27% of African Americans that smoke. So we have work to do. I think it's 15% of our Hispanic brothers and sisters that still smoke. So there's work to do. I think there are two things here. One is just pressure in your life. And sometimes smoking forms a way to alleviate that pressure.
Self-medicating.
Yeah, exactly, self-medicating. And then the second thing is in some places it's a social norm. In some households it's a social norm. And the work to change that continues. So.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can I do this one
Sure.
quick thing? Okay, so first of all, think about this. When I ask this next question, some people might be embarrassed to raise their hand, but back in the 50s and 60s and even early 70s, it was hot, sexy, everybody was smoking in ads. It was acceptable for people to smoke cigarettes while pregnant.
Yeah.
Think about that. Now, because I was really struck by what Tracey just said, raise your hand if you had any parents who smoked cigarettes. Now lower your hand if during your lifetime they stopped smoking.
Yep.
it wasn't because your parents were special. Mine weren't either.
Right.
People were affected by research, by policy initiatives that were created out of that research, and by whistleblowing. Those are the three things that change everything when you have folks smoking when they're pregnant. And today, people are embarrassed to smoke in public.
Yeah, they even changed tennis tournament was Virginia Slims, no longer called that.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. Listen, I know, time is ticking when we're having a great discussion. I have one last question before we close. And this is to all of you. And we have about 3 minutes.
Okay.
We've all stated in one form or fashion here this afternoon the importance of policy. And we also discussed with earlier speakers the importance of having allies, people who can give you what you need and what you want. For instance, like Councilman Lockett. With that being said, the last question is, what do you have to do to gain the support? You're working on a much needed policy, or need to work on a much needed policy. But it is not the will of legislative heads to allow that policy to move forward. What do you do in those instances as grassroots advocates and other concerned people? It is a much needed policy. We recognize it to be so. We know so. But there are powers to be. Do we bow down to the powers to be?
Never.
Should we tread forward? So tell us more.
I say the people. Bring the people.
Yeah, and in the words of one alderman here in Pine Bluff about 20 years ago, he said, if you could just get those people to stop calling my house, I'll go for this.
Tracey, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I've lived on both sides of this, where you have a policy that you want passed, but there's no will, or a policy that's passing that you don't want passed. I've lived more in that one lately, right? Bad policy that I have to fight, and I've had some success in that arena. But to get support for something that you want takes time to build, again, coalition, to build. And what I've done in my work is do my research on the legislators that you have to work with. What are the things that they believe in? What are the things that impact them? What church do they go to? If they do go to a church or have connections in the community, who are the people that they trust? And you start to work on influencing those legislators to help move them in your direction for something that you want to pass. And it changes their behavior when they hear from multiple people they trust, as well as the larger community, to do something positive that you want. But it takes time, and you have to do your research, and you have to speak to people where they are, and you have to do it on a personal and political level. You should do articles in the newspaper to help support your position. So you have, you're sort of building a fort around each of them to drive them to your position. That's how I do it.
So I hear the grassroots advocacy, building up support, legislative
Can I add
support.
one thing?
Yes.
Media, social media,
Yes.
media.
Yeah.
How many people have seen the piece of the social media clip about somebody putting a Coke can inside of Coca-Cola, an actual Coca-Cola, and sort of trying to display how unhealthy it is, and over a period of weeks or months, the can disintegrates in the Coke. Or those kinds of commercials. How many people saw in Flint, Michigan, where people were pouring their water, person after person, and like sludge was coming out of their drinking water and where their babies were supposed to be bathing, or pictures of sick babies from drinking the water in Flint. Those are the kinds of things, or even people appealing about, what about the woman who smoked and she takes off her wig, she takes off her makeup, she has the thing in her throat. Yeah, so when you see those kinds of commercials that turn something that's supposed to be one way and make it real, or a healthy lung and a lung with cancer, how many have seen that one? That makes you get real urgent, and it can happen real quick.
Yeah, can I just mention, the social media piece has become the thing now. And in Arkansas, at the state legislature, there's a hashtag that you follow that all the state reps follow, and senators. Yeah, you do. And whenever there's something like pending, something urgent, something needed, you find that people will comment, add that hashtag, and state reps respond or not respond. I mean, but you can see where they've read it or they've received it because they were included in it. I mean, it's made a huge difference for us on a number of issues. So social media makes a difference. Thank you for bringing it up, Representative.
So it sounds like what I hear the panelists saying is, no matter if there is a needed policy, you know it's beneficial, but you're not getting support from the very top, it seems to me I'm hearing the groundswell.
Yep.
Go for it. So we have that. I know Barbara is hearing that. I know Debbie is hearing that. I know Becky is hearing that. I know every single local coalition is hearing that. Don't let our heads sometimes be the barrier. We want to do the work, and it seems like there are times where we have to move forward with that. Yes, Joyce, I'm sorry.
Just follow up to everything they were saying, and we hear you loud and clear about follow the money, and we all try to do it. But in this day and age with funds decreasing or whatever, would you all not agree to that we also have to learn to move without the money? And when I say without the money, how important to establish relationships and collaboration where we can pool resources and use humankind, mankind, and things like that. So I just don't want people to think that, without the money, the efforts are lost. But you still got to forge on, follow the money, and at the same time move without the money.
And let me clarify though, when I say follow the money, I don't mean you physically go where the money is. I mean to find out where people's real priorities or intentions are, see how they spend their money, see where the money goes, and then that can help you figure out how you approach that person, that kind of thing.
Right.
But absolutely, you don't have to have money to fight City Hall or fight whatever.
Okay. Well, yes, Dr. Baker.
Just on the money thing, I want to make one point about what happened in the state of California when they raised their cigarette taxes. And they had gone through several cycles of not being able to raise their cigarette taxes at the state level. And it went through a referendum. The vote was like 65%, 35%. But the key money piece was that the amount of dollars spent on the no's, we don't want this tax, was half that of, the amount of money that was spent on the yeses, we want the tax policy, was half that of the no's. So you had almost a $35 million difference. But the people who had raised less money actually won out.
Right.
And so those are some things I think that also might be helpful, is that just because you're the person or the powers that you may be going against may have more money, doesn't mean they have to win out.
That's absolutely right.
Okay, we are encouraged. We are going to have to stop out of respect for time and the next presenter, and I believe an upcoming break too.
So if you would please join me in thanking the panelists for their time. Thank you.